Amanda Stoker. She's the Assistant Minister for Women and the Assistant to the Attorney-General as well. Thanks for joining us, Amanda. I wanted to get your thoughts first up about the protests on the border between New South Wales and Queensland. There seems to be a lot of animosity towards anybody protesting these days, but this is an unacceptable situation for that part of this country, isn't it? It's one community and that border just tears them apart.
It is unacceptable, and to try and pretend that the border between Queensland and New South Wales doesn't tear apart a community is utterly unfair. Insult is added to injury, though, when the Premier says the state isn't capable of taking in any more people and can't put them in quarantine because they don't have the capacity to do that anymore. And yet we find out that 100 NRL players' families from Sydney coming from a hotspot are made space for, are found a place in quarantine, while people who are working FIFO, who are missing family, who are even serving in this parliament, can't get back home to Queensland. It makes a mockery of the deep harm that is done when you tear families apart, harm businesses with closed borders, and deny people the easy access to medical care that comes with these quite arbitrary restrictions.
Well, you've preempted what was going to be my next question, because this issue with the NRL families is extraordinary, isn't it? Because, you know, over the past 18 months on this program and others on Sky, we've highlighted some of the personal trauma of families torn apart by that New South Wales-Queensland border, of women being refused access to Queensland hospitals and having to go 1,000 kilometres or more to Sydney. Go to your own hospitals, says Anastasia Palaszczuk. Yet she lets in movie stars and now NRL families.
It is madness, and Queenslanders and New South Welshmen alike have a right to be angry about this, because the Queensland government, along with every other state and territory, agreed with the Commonwealth a national plan to get us out of this mess. It depends on good vaccination rates, and it depends on everyone pulling their weight. Queensland undermines confidence in the AstraZeneca vaccine, announces white elephant quarantine facilities that won't even be ready until a point at which we should have reached the vaccination target anyway, and that are 2 hours away from the international airport. And meanwhile, keep insisting that they reserve the right to snap us into lockdown and to keep our borders closed indefinitely. This trauma must stop. The uncertainty is damaging the economy so much, it's damaging mental health so much. And I can't help but think that all of this behaviour is really just because the Queensland government knows its management of the Queensland health system is so poor that it doesn't have confidence that it could handle living with COVID rather than hiding in fear from it under the doona. With ambulance ramping rates that are so high, you know,
I highlighted that
rates that are 58% at Logan.
Yep, I highlighted at the top of the program how there are ramping issues in Western Australia and South Australia. Should have done a check right around the country, because I know that, as you say, Queensland has got those issues as well. Look, here's something that really troubles me, though. I agree with what you're saying. Agree with you when you say that about the border and the way Queensland insists on managing it. I had the Deputy Prime Minister, Barnaby Joyce, on the show last week, who was also highly critical of it. So there you have an Assistant Minister and a Deputy Prime Minister critical of the management of this interstate border, yet the federal government is supplying Australian defence personnel to help implement that border. Shouldn't, at the very least, the federal government say, no, you know, if we don't agree with the way you're managing this, don't do it with our soldiers?
Look, I think you can expect that, as Queensland in particular seems to want to shuffle back from its commitment to the national plan, they can expect less and less cooperation from the Commonwealth government. If we want to say we're all in this together, well, we've got a plan, let's implement it together so that Australians can get back to all that is great about living in this country. I fully expect that the leadership that we have seen and will continue to see from the Prime Minister and from the Morrison government's leadership team will keep ramping up that pressure, not for ourselves, not for a political point, but because Australians and Queenslanders need it. And our duty's to them. It's not to Anastasia Palaszczuk's convenience.
We are, after all, one country. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.